take our breaths away with its glow.
Whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. I'm Maria Thompson Corley. If that quote from Philippians resonated with you, stay tuned. I'd love to introduce you to intriguing, creative people whose light is making our world a lovelier place. Welcome to Finding Beauty.
Talking today to Darryl Taylor, whose performances have been noted for their compelling artistry and authority, and his international career has been highlighted by performances of art song, opera, and oratorio. His repertoire extends from Bach to Britain and beyond. And I could read this entire bio, but it would take way too long. But let's just say, as you're listening to Darryl Taylor sing Prayer by Leslie Adams, that you can tell that this is a very special voice and a very special artist. And I am very grateful to be along. And I have to add a personal note, which is that I have to thank Darryl for some of the greatest milestones in my career. For example, he invited me to be on my very first recording for Naxos, which was Dreamer, which was music written with words by Langston Hughes. Also performing at the Liszt Academy in Budapest. My first solo piano recording, which was of music by Leslie Adams, who Darryl was kind enough to introduce me to Leslie, and also performing at Carnegie Hall. So I would say that I'm someone special and that Darryl took special interest in me. However, I know that he spreads all that kind of love and support to all kinds of people, and he's just that kind of a guy. So thank you, Darryl, for fitting me into your schedule. I know when I met you, I was almost 9 months pregnant with my first child, and I was grouchy.
Yes, you were.
Pregnant or grouchy? Anyway.
Well, I don't know about you were definitely preggers.
I was grouchy. I remember that well. And I know that you had come to Florida State to give a lecture recital about African American art song, which is one of your passions. And I was a visiting professor at Florida A&M. FSU had arranged for you to speak in both places. And I was really blown away by your musicality and your voice. And but I didn't know what a crusader you were for African American art song. Was that towards the beginning, or had you already been doing that for a while when I met you?
Let's see. That was in the early 90s. I don't think that my article in the Journal of Singing had yet shown up. So I think that was in the nascent period where I just finished graduate school and was tilling soil and planting seeds. So it wasn't quite in the full fruition. I hadn't conceptualized the African American Art Song Alliance, for instance.
Okay, but you were already giving lecture recitals.
I was already giving recitals. I knew that I wanted to focus largely on that repertoire, mostly because I found it so difficult to find information on it, and I knew I couldn't be alone in wanting to access it.
Mm-hmm. And was that something that you came up with yourself, or I know that you studied with legendary George Shirley. Was that completely from you, or?
Well, but I also had the great benefit of being in close proximity to Willis Patterson. I knew Willis Patterson long before I knew George Shirley. I knew Willis Patterson when I was a high school student. He came and recruited me for Interlochen summer music camp.
Mm-hmm.
And he came to Detroit, to my high school in Detroit. And when I then came to the University of Michigan, especially during my doctoral work, I went there for my master's, but I continued through my doctoral work. And he was my advisor. And I will never forget when we had a little conversation, conferencing about my graduate studies. He says, "I'm going to be tougher on you than I am on everybody." And I said, "Yay, me."
I was going to say, woohoo.
But he said, "It's mostly because, I expect a lot out of you, and I know the world will not be easy on you, and so you have to do things a certain way." And I as a follow-up to that, I took an independent study with him on African American art song, and he required me to do a 30-page paper. Remember, this is not my only class. So.
Right. I mean, I was just thinking, he required just you to do that? Because it was an individual study. Oh, that's right. No. It was just you.
Karen Johnson also took it at the same time. So we both had to do 30-page papers. So it wasn't just me. But he required me to do a 30-page paper. And my paper was titled at the time, "What's So Important About Studying African American Art Song?" And so I laid the groundwork of what were the important, who were the important composers, what were the important cycles. If you were just beginning to just start looking at that work, now this is back in the 90s, mind you.
Yeah.
And as part of that, I tried to do as exhaustive research as I could in there at the University of Michigan Music Library, and which is a very well-stocked library. As part of that, I looked in every issue of the Journal of Singing. Prior to it being called the Journal of Singing, it was called the Nats Bulletin.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at it for the
NAT standing for National Association of Teachers of Singing, correct?
Right.
Right.
And
okay.
I looked at it for about 25 years. 25 years from that period before, thinking that was a good marker because about 20 years prior, Willis Patterson had published the Anthology of Art Songs by Black American Composers. So I made the gross assumption that there wouldn't be a lot of focus on it much prior to that publication date, and I wanted to give a wide berth to say, okay, you've had all this time to respond. I don't want to lay too much on the National Association of Teachers of Singing, but it is the seminal publication for those that teach voice in the United States. And I found only 2 references, and I made a big deal out of it, and Mr. Dean Patterson liked the article quite a lot. I also focused on curricular issues and societal prejudices and that sort of thing. And he encouraged me largely to get this published in the Journal of Singing. When imagine my surprise when I submitted it to the Journal of Singing, the editing marker, they said, "Well, we noticed that you criticized the Nats Journal quite a lot, and said we would just like you to know that if articles were submitted, we would publish them, but they are not submitted. And so I said, well, you make a good point of that. And so I withdrew that wholesale criticism of them. But I do, when I lecture a lot, I talk and say, we have got to take the mantle. And we have to tell we have to be responsible for telling our own history, telling our own story. If we don't do that and we leave it to someone else, we shouldn't be surprised when the story is a little askew or isn't told quite properly.
Or at all.
or at all.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah. Well, and so that was published in the Journal of Singing, and the other thing that the journal asked me to do, they asked me to put an appendix of a list of composers and their publisher information. So I did that. It was a good idea, and that honestly, the appendix along with that whole article became the nexus and the genesis of it became the seed of the African American Art Song Alliance. Because remember, this was about 1995, and the internet was just starting to be populated. People were just starting to really understand it and use it. Even if it had been available prior to that, it was not popularly available. And in 1997, I was in Iowa, and I used the resources of the university to learn HTML, and I put up a page. It was a very rough page, but it was it was mostly information based, and I stayed up until 3 in the morning, many nights, and linked as much information as I could all together, so that if you were looking for information on Margaret Bond's, say, that you would find her page on the Alliance, and you would also find other links to other things that I had done a lot of the groundwork for you already.
Well, it's a good thing that Iowa wasn't much to do in Iowa, because that sounds exhausting. I mean, I know obviously it was a labor of love, but back in the day, I know these things weren't quite as user-friendly as they are now, and that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Well, the pages were a lot more elementary at that time, and eventually the standard became a bit much for me, and I'm not an IT person. I didn't stay current with coding and all that sort of thing, and I just kind of farmed it out to other people.
Yeah.
Has its benefits and difficulties. One of the main difficulties was my being able to update the page with regularity and keep it current and keep it accurate. So the Alliance fell into a period where it wasn't quite as useful as it had been. But then, thank the Lord, there came Facebook.
Right.
And the Facebook discussion page for the Alliance has been a real godsend for our ability to communicate in real time. And I field hundreds of requests, and we have nearly 3,000 people engaged in the discussion page, and lots of other people that access periodic articles and their salient videos and performances and announcements.
Right. No, I know it's a great resource, and I'm one of the members. But and
yes,
so
you are.
Yes, I am. And so you had you started the Alliance, and then you started a conference. And what gave you the impetus to feel like, okay, I think I got to put together a conference?
Well, it was coming on 10 years since I had been doing that work, and remember, I'm still a young scholar at the time. And saying this is important. It's important to mark the fact that we've been doing it. And prior to that, I had always had this dream of I'd seen other art song festivals happening, and I noted, as along with so many other things, that people of color, composers of color, and performers of color largely were not present for whatever reason, whether it's a matter of benign neglect or other, they just weren't present. And I said, you have a hard time establishing yourself in mainstream media if you're only performed once every 5 years, or once, or even if your pieces are only performed in February, or that sort of thing. That you can't really, you're not playing on a level playing field. And so recognizing that, it was just a great opportunity for me to really indulge in what I really love, and to invite my friends to come to Irvine and to celebrate with me. When I was first looking for the funds, the chair of my department, I teach at the University of California in Irvine, the chair of the music department just questioned whether or not people would come. And I said, if 15 people come, then we will celebrate with 15 people, and we'll do what we can. It's not a matter of popularity. It's a matter of making it a significant marker, a time marker. And so that 50 years hence, people can look back and say, at least at this time, somebody did look at the subject matter. And I was really quite surprised, delighted even, that very first time. I think you came.
I don't know if I came to the first one, but I know I've been to a couple of them. But I mean, it was the ones that I have been to were very well attended, and the level of musicianship, of course, as I would have expected. I mean, that was no big surprise because I knew some of the people who were coming. I mean, there's just amazing names that have not been household names for, I mean, you can say the obvious reasons. At least obvious to me, but it was just always just an uplifting experience, and musically.
Well, 2007 was the very first one, and the response to it was that people wanted it to be done every year, and I said, well, no, I can't promise to give that kind of, because it takes a Herculean effort, and I don't have support. I don't have even TA support until we're in conference. So until we're in conference, it's really just me. I don't have government grants or anything like that to help me. And remember, I'm full-time performer, full-time professor, and wanting to do things right. I just said I would do it every 5 years.
I mean, I can't imagine how you pull, I mean, it's such a big undertaking. It really is truly amazing. And this last conference, Hamp Songs, Thomas Hampson's organization for recording American music was involved, and that was really exciting. How did you reach out to them, or did they know about you?
Quite surprising. Thomas Hampson recognized the recording that you and I did, our recording of Langston Hughes poetry. He did a radio series of art song, and one of them was focused on poetry of Langston Hughes, and our recording Dreamer on Naxos was featured prominently on that.
I'm a black Pierrot. She did not love me, so I crept away into the night, and the night was black too. I am a black Pierrot. She not love me, so I wept until the red dawn dripped blood over the eastern hills, and my heart was bleeding too. I am a black Pierrot. Not love me, so with my once gay-colored soul, shrunken like a balloon without air, I went forth in the morning I went forth in the morning. I went forth in the morning. I went forth in the morning to seek a new ground line.
I missed it. I got to go back and check that out.
It was all over the entire country. I mean, all 50 states and.
I know. I'm not saying that it wasn't. I'm just saying I missed it. Now I know I had no excuse, but you have no idea how many things I miss. But
right.
Okay, well that's exciting. You should have told me.
Yeah,
anyway.
and that let me know that we were on his radar,
Yeah.
and so I invited him to be part of the conference, and I didn't hear from him for a while, and then out of the blue, I heard back from his the administrative staff, Christine Finn, who said, "We would like to help you. How can we help you?" And I said, "Well, I'm not sure how you can help, but thank you very much." And they then suggested, "Are you having this live streamed?" I said, "I would like to." I had tried before to have the 2012 conference. I tried to have everything video recorded, but it didn't wind up being very, very successful. I said, there's only so much I can do for, by myself. And they said, well, allow us to cover the expense of that and to administer it. And you don't threaten me with a good time. That's a great idea. And the partnering was seamless and wonderful. And the only drawback was that they only did the performances that were in Winifred Smith Hall. So the performances that were in Christ Our Redeemer AME Church, they didn't live stream, and the performance of the lectures that were not in Winifred Smith Hall, they didn't stream. And so it's still a little, you still get, even if you go to the Hamsung Foundation Vimeo page, you get a sense of the grandeur of the conference, but it's not a comprehensive view of it. It's not exhaustive.
Well, hopefully it's enough that the people who see it maybe will think about coming to the next one. So,
that
they
would
can
be
get
lovely.
full. Yeah. Well, speaking of recordings then, you did a number of recordings as a tenor, and was Fields of Wonder, was that your last one as a tenor?
Well, Fields of Wonder was the last one that I recorded as a tenor, but there were several that I had already put in the can that came out after Fields of Wonder.
Oh, okay.
That they came out when they came out, and it's still my work.
Yeah.
It's just that I had moved on to a different Bach. I moved on to countertenor in the fall of 2006 is when I switched to countertenor.
Wow, was it?
And
yeah.
my very last tenor.
Go ahead. Sorry, your very last.
My very last tenor performance was in April of 2007.
Okay. Now, and I'll tell you, I stumbled on this article, which I hope you saw, I'm sure you did, by Daniel Garrett, the compulsive reader, called The Importance of Transcendence. And
I did see that.
Great length about you as a countertenor and a tenor. So I would recommend that to people who have some time, because it is exhaustive, but it was quite something. And I should mention Fields of Wonder was music by Robert Owens. And you have commissioned a number of pieces from various composers, and you have helped to shape the direction of some of these pieces. I know you mentioned a piece by Andre Myers that was at the last conference that you helped to shape that. And I don't know how long it would take for you to talk about doing that, but if you could give just a sketch of some of your experiences in commissioning and shaping and some of the people that you have worked with in that way.
Well, when you commission, especially if you're commissioning with a goal towards amplifying a certain narrative. Personally, I find it necessary and important to partner with composers not just to function as a parrot that only it's all your vision, and you need this decibel marking, or you needed this tempo. But I will talk with the composer and say, well, is this what you mean? Or and then eventually I have to find that personal space that so that the artistry comes from a place of origin in my organic self.
Well, I really. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to comment on. I mean, I very much see that in having had the wonderful opportunity to work with you is just the way that you really try to make sure that everything makes sense in some way, so that it can all be presented as having an inevitability, I guess, in a sense of having internalized it and really feeling like, you're not just singing something, but you are presenting a portion of you, even if it's somebody else's words and someone else's ideas. So I think that personifying, I guess, is what I'm looking for.
Well, that really has to be, I think, we as performing artists, that has to be part of our. Even if I'm doing Puccini, or I don't do Puccini, but if I'm doing Mozart, now I don't know Mozart. I don't have an opportunity to converse with Mozart. There are certain stylistic things that I have to know and I have to respect, but there is a certain wealth of my originality that must be part of it, or else there's no reason for me to come and do it.
Nope.
In talking, if I do Mozart, I can't just do what has been done before. I have to find some sort of organic truth inside of myself, or else. Well, I mean, there are reasons for or financial reasons that you still do work even if you can't find some sort of original truth. But
you try. I mean, but even you're putting a layer of something that I know. Obviously, I know exactly what you mean because I play. What people want me to play it. Sure, you got me paying, but I totally get that. But I really feel, as far as really delving deeply, I really feel that from you. So let me say, your path as an artist started out like a lot of African American singers, which is in church, and I know that you started off singing gospel, and so I have a little bit of I've Got to Lie Down, Hall Johnson, I've Got to Lie Down, just to give a little taste of that.
Okay.
I got to lie down, how shall I rise? Got to lie down, how shall I rise? I got to lie down, how shall I rise? Peer before the judgment bar, I got to lie down, how shall I rise?
So, and aside from that, though, to get from gospel to singing tenor to singing countertenor, can you tell me a little bit about how you ended up being a classical tenor first and then a countertenor?
Well, no, I didn't realize that my work in gospel was building really necessary muscle. It was building strength in a way that I'm not sure I would have gotten if I had started in voice choir and if I had started, in more traditional ways of approaching a classical career. In my gospel choir, my church choir in Detroit, my home church, there were times where I was the tenor section, and remember these are big gospel things with Leslie, Hammond organ with Leslie speakers and drums and all this sort of thing, and everybody you have a full soprano section, a full alto section, and I was the tenor section, and I had to balance that sort of thing. That was my training in projection.
Okay.
Unbeknownst to me. So imagine my shock when some people would say to me, then as a lyric tenor, you have such a tiny voice. I said, oh, really?
You don't know. You have no idea, actually, obviously.
I wish you would have told me that at Welcome Baptist, and I would have not tried to balance out all of those gospel sopranos.
But did you have to then apply, like, you were trying to approach it completely differently, and that's why your voice sounded smaller, or?
I don't know. Honestly, I guess, eventually there is the building of the muscle, and then there's the refining of it. That's if you were a bodybuilder, there's a mass element where you're putting on mass, and then you carve it, and you refine that mass that you have. And I honestly, I don't know to what extent. There was a time when George Shirley and I were working, and he turned to me, he said, "Darryl, I think you may be a dramatic tenor." And I mean, it shocked me so. I said, "Me? I'm a lyrico leggero." But yes. I think perhaps it was a matter of certain strictures I placed on myself. I can't say for sure because honestly, if I had known for sure what the issue was, I would have addressed it. But, but that goes back to my interface with Willis Patterson. When Willis Patterson came and found me at Renaissance High School in Detroit, that was my introduction to classical music. I went to Interlochen that summer on a scholarship, and I sang with their choirs and had voice lessons, and it was the first blossoming, not even blossoming, just kind of planting the seed. Nothing had really blossomed as much as it just kind of said, this is interesting. This isn't a different sort of space for me. And when it was time for me to go to college, when I graduated from high school, I found myself without financial resources. And I knew it had been drilled into me that I must go to college. I'm grateful that it was drilled into me, that this was not a choice if I wanted the kind of lifestyle that I wanted, and that I had to go to college and use that time wisely. And so being without resources, I did a certain analysis and said, well, I have a voice. and I auditioned. I had a voice teacher who said, you have to go to USC, the University of Southern California. And I was living in Los Angeles at the time. Though I grew up in Detroit, I finished high school in Los Angeles. Okay. And without any questioning, I said, okay, well, let's go and audition at USC. I only auditioned one place. I didn't apply anywhere else.
You're the only other person I know who did that. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry. Continue.
Well, I don't recommend it. It's foolhardy, but God takes care of fools, and
well, yeah, because I did the same thing. I'm just saying, you're the first person I've ever spoken to who could say that same thing. But yeah, it is foolhardy. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. So I auditioned. They gave me a scholarship. I was grateful, and it was there that my real knowledge, sense of artistry, my knowledge of myself, and my full knowledge of what I really did not know came to light. Honestly, until then, I thought that if I did anything in music, it was going to be in R&B. And as it turns out, there was a lot more waiting for me. I will tell you, and you're the first and hopefully only interviewer I will share this with. At the time, I tried to audition for Star Search. While I was a student at USC, and they wholesale rejected me. They would not. They wouldn't even hear me.
Well, you know what? There are many people who have been rejected by those shows, so don't feel bad about that.
No, but and I don't feel bad. It's as much as it's very telling. I honestly and I share this with students that every no is not necessarily a bad thing, that sometimes no's help us to make the right decisions for our lives, things that we don't even realize are necessary for us. And so, Ed McMahon said no. And
what did you sing? I'm just curious. I just want to picture it. What did you sing?
Everything Must Change. That was my big thing. I would either sing Everything Must Change, or I would sing Home from the Wiz, or Believe in Yourself from the Wiz. Those were my biggies.
Okay, okay.
My hits.
You still go to in karaoke? I guess singers probably don't do much karaoke.
I will home. Just get some gin in me, and I will bring it.
Okay, next time I'm in California, that's a promise. I will play. Just point me to a piano. I'll play it for you. But now, when you became a countertenor, I remember on the stage of the Liszt Academy that you were just fooling around, and I think it was Ombre Mai Fu that you started singing. And I don't know, do you remember that?
Well, that sounds
do.
correct, because anytime I wanted to model what I did, I sang Ombre Mai Fu.
Yeah, and I remember thinking, wow, that is just so beautiful. And at the time you were still a tenor. So when you decided to make the switch, I knew that, it was going to be a good thing because I'd already heard a preview. But what brought you to become a countertenor?
Well, around the conclusion of my graduate studies, I was working with Mr. Shirley, and he was asking me to do something specific, and I was having trouble with it. And I said, Mr. Shirley, and I could sense he was frustrated. I said, I think I understand what you're asking for, but I can't do it in this voice. And I said, I can do it an octave up. And I did it, and he said, well, yes, that's exactly what I'm asking for. I said, I understand, but my voice was not cooperating in the way that he wanted or that I wanted. Mm-hmm. And he then was the first to say to me, Darryl, I think that you're a countertenor. And I said, wholesale, no. I rejected it. I said, no, I am not a countertenor. I don't want to be a countertenor. Well, now, interestingly, he said to one of my studio mates at the same time, I think that you're a countertenor. And that person said, yes, and embraced it and went on to have a phenomenal career, and that is none less than the phenomenal David Daniels.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so David said yes. I said no. David went on and had phenomenal success, and I'm proud of him and happy for him. I really loved my tenor voice. I felt that there were some issues that I had to grapple with, and I didn't want to abandon my tenor voice, and that's what it felt like. It felt like abandonment. And so I didn't abandon it. I held on to it, and I think that I've worked out to the extent that I could those issues that I had. And I got to a certain marker where you start to reassess where you are vocally. And I said, well, I'm doing fine, and if ever I'm to switch to countertenor, it should be now, or else you start getting age-based diminishing returns. Around that same time, I was invited back to the University of Michigan to do, I did a performance of Eric Santos's Dreamer, the whole cycle at the University of Michigan, and I also did a master class. And as part of that master class, there was a mezzo singing, and I modeled for her, not this, but that. And Mr. Shirley was there, and he came to me afterwards. He said, Darryl, have you given any more thought to that which I suggested, that you may well be a countertenor? I said, well, as a matter of fact, Mr. Shirley, I have. I've always thought about it, and I think I may be ready. And I went home, and I sang through some things, and I said, well, gosh, because I had been modeling my singing for mezzo-sopranos for those interim years, some of the issues that had presented themselves initially with the countertenor had worked themselves out, and I said, well, I guess I'm a countertenor.
And I think, did I get to play with you your first performance? Was that your first public performance as a countertenor for Leslie in Cleveland, or was that not?
It was my first in the United States, and my first of his repertoire. It was the first time doing repertoire that I had sung as a tenor, and it felt very, very odd. That's what I shared with you.
Well, it sounded gorgeous. Well, and I played it for you both ways, actually, because I think those pieces For You There Is No Song and Since You Went Away and Prayer. I think those were, I don't know, it might have been something else as well, but I remembered that I had played those for you before when you were a tenor.
Right.
Yeah, I can imagine a whole new world, so to speak. And then you recorded these pieces by Rosanna Scalfi Marcello.
Yes.
Marcello, sorry. Can you tell me about how I had not heard of this composer. Can you tell me how you discovered her music?
Well, I had not heard of her either. I knew peripherally about her as a singer, and that she was the wife of Benedetto Marcello, and John Glenn Payton and Deborah Hayes, a musicologist, Deborah Hayes, did the work of unearthing them from a library in Rome, unearthing these 12 cantatas that had been mislabeled. They had been assigned to, or attributed to Benedetto Marcello, and they said, well, you'll notice here in the corner it says, by Rosanna Scalfi Marcello.
small detail.
Yeah. So they unearthed them, and Barbara Jackson in Clarnon Edition put out this big compendium of all 12 solo cantatas. I, at the time, was looking for a recording project, something to do that was distinct and unique in Baroque music. I thought it was going to be Mexican Baroque. I thought I was going to do something of Mexican Baroque. But when I found them and I looked at them, they fit my voice very well. I will say, for the record, when I was recording them, when time for recording, I was very, very sick and on a ton of antibiotics, and I come to find out that antibiotics make it difficult for you to sing. And so I lend a proviso that it's not, well, I think it's okay, and it's the best I could have done at the time. It's not, I would like to have been able to have recorded them again. Okay. But it's such a Herculean effort. I mean, all 12 of these cantatas, with the poetry is by Rosanna Scalfi Marcello. The music is by her, and I had to fly in Jory Vinacourt, and I had not only had to fly in the Baroque cellist, but had to have a separate seat for her cello, and then fly in the theorist and rent a theorbo. But you can imagine that when you find that when I'm in my producer's seat, it's time to record, and my voice isn't doing what I want it to do. It's like, well, is it serious enough that we have to cancel everything and reschedule everything and pay for everything double? And I made the choice to plow forward.
Oh. Well, I mean, I think you want the excerpt that I was going to play is, please. I did not study Italian. I studied French, I studied German, I studied Spanish, but fiore ho sempre nel core, is that correct?
That's fantastic. It's italic right? So we don't trill it, we just flip it to core. Gloria ho sempre nel core.
Okay, I was close. All right. Beautiful. Yay. Okay, so I have a couple more questions. Very quickly, I'm going to ask you, and then I think we both need to wrap this up. So the first one that I'm asking people is about the importance or how you define beauty, and is beauty important? And as I'm asking this question, I always explain what I think I meant when I thought of the question, which is just that, in this world, I mean, there is so much stuff that is not beautiful in so many ways. Now, to focus on depicting that, sometimes we look upon art as something that is supposed to reflect our reality, or we can look upon art as something that is meant to perhaps soothe our reality. But I've gotten some interesting definitions of what do you consider to be beauty and how important. So you want to give it a shot?
Well, looking at what is beauty, I would demur to the Supreme Court when they said when they were trying to define pornography, that I can't define it, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah. Okay.
So beauty is obviously subjective. What's beautiful to me may not be beautiful to someone else. I could more easily, I guess, say what things that I find beautiful. I find kindness beautiful. But genuine kindness, not just a gesture, but things that you find at the source of things. I find the whole span of humanity beautiful in a certain wise, even in its ugliness. That it continues. It's this ballet. It's this jostling of good and evil that goes forth, and this pendulum that swings, and we're currently experiencing maybe perhaps a more momentous part of that swing, but recognizing that, you also recognize that as sure as the sun rises in the east, that pendulum also swings to the other side, and so the beauty of life and the beauty of movement. I love art galleries, and I love dance, and I love literature. I love really good movies, and I find beauty in all of those things. And I think that you have to be able to endure or recognize ugliness for its own purposes in order to really be saturated by beauty.
I guess that makes sense. If everything were always beautiful, whatever that is, then none of it would have any real special meaning.
Exactly.
Okay, one of my other questions is, do you think that art could change the world?
I think that art does change the world, not can. It most certainly does change the world. There are myriad examples of how that goes, but most succinctly, when anthropologists 100 years hence look back at our society, some of the things that we find very, very important will be trivial in their eyes. But the music that we listen to, the importance that we give to art and culture will be defining markers of our humanity. They are in every culture that we look at. It defines who we are as people, so that we know very little of the day-to-day politics of Grecian society, but we know that in ancient Greece that they had an awakening of their spiritual and artistic lives and welcomed and initiated Greek drama, for instance. And that then led to when drama wasn't enough to move the emotions, that moved into monody and saw its flowering in opera and et cetera. Any time that we look at it in ancient artifacts and we're able to find musical instruments, that says something wholesale differently about that person, about that tribe, about that group, than if we don't find musical instruments there. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep. Okay. So two other things very quickly. One is what keeps you inspired?
One of the things that keeps me inspired is that there's so much work to be done. There's so much to be done that hasn't been done, and when I was in my qualifying exams for the doctorate, and Willis Patterson was part of my committee, he put to me, I had done a presentation on African American art song, and he was saying how is this going to be moved into better world recognition. And I talked about how it really should fall to Black performers, Black conductors, and people that make a difference on that level. I said, but barring that, then it falls to young scholars to lift the music and to ring the bell. And he asked the question. He says, "And who are the young scholars?" And I saw a light went off of my head. Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me. I'm a young scholar. It's my responsibility, and that for me keeps me engaged in music in a way that I'm not sure that I would be if I saw it as just a means to an end for a paycheck or for my personal glory or the glorification of my singing or of my artistry. It's the fact that I'm able to make more of a difference in life. And honestly, at the end of the day, if I arrive at my perilous end and I haven't made a difference in the world, I will be ashamed that I haven't, changed a heart, or I haven't left a marker that I was here and that my life had some meaning and some importance. That keeps me motivated.
Wow. Okay, and if people want to find out more about you, because I just scratched the surface of your bio, you have a website, DarrylTaylor, right? .com.
DarrylTaylor.com. Yeah.
And they can find out what else you're doing, what you're recording, where you're performing, all those wonderful things. Yes.
Honestly, at this point, and I'm not sure how long it will stay this way, but I have a very vivid life on Facebook. And so if you want to communicate via Darryl Taylor CT, Facebook.com, Darryl Taylor CT, that will take you to my musician page, and that's where I really spend a lot of my time. Also, the African American Art Song Alliance has a discussion group on Facebook, so it's Facebook, and you just put in African American Art Song Alliance, and it'll pop up. And the last part of it is Art Song Alliance, and that's the common denominator on Twitter or on I don't have something from the Alliance on Instagram, but on Pinterest and the other social. Listen, I have to say that social media has been very, very good to marginalized people and to marginalized studies. Yeah, it has removed the gatekeeper, so to speak. And so it's been very useful for us.
We get together without anybody in our way. That's so true.
Exactly.
Listen, well, I know you have to go. I know I have to go. Thank you very much, Darryl Taylor. I'm Maria Thompson Corley, and you've been listening to Finding Beauty.
The theme music for Finding Beauty is Symphony of Light, written and performed by Kiana Corley, with assistance on the cello from Allegra Banks. Rusty Banks was the producer. Right now, you're listening to Liszt's Petrarch Sonnet No. 104, performed by yours truly. You can hear the rest of it on my CD, Music from the Novel Letting Go, available on CreateSpace and Amazon. If you're interested, you can check me out at mariacorley.com or mariasworld.us. You can also find me on Twitter, at Maria Corley, or YouTube. My recordings are available through Albany or Amazon. My novel, Letting Go, is available on Smashwords, CreateSpace, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon. Or drop me a line on my site, and I'll send you a signed copy. I want to leave you with one more quote. Do your little bit of good where you are. It's the little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world. Desmond Tutu. Have a beautiful day.